everyone! Today we're making a charm bracelet. This is a simple project that can be given as a gift this holiday season. You can totally keep it for yourself too though. I didn't really feel up to being on camera this week.
Sorry.
And I wanted to get right into this tutorial, so let's go. I'm about to go over all the tools and materials that you're going to need for this project, specifically the first part of the craft. There'll be more materials listed later, which are just some round nose pliers and jump rings. But the first and most important piece of this craft is the bracelet itself. You want one that has enough links in it so that you can add charms to it, so keep that in mind. I had purchased a cheap bracelet set on Amazon a little while ago for a costume, and I only needed one of the bracelets, so I had this one left over and it ended up being perfect for this project. I'll link that and the other supplies that I used in the description box below. To start, here's what you'll need. Shrink plastic material. I went with the brand name Shrinky Dink plastic in crystal clear. Sharpies in whatever color you need. I recommend having both the fine point for outlines, shading, and coloring, and the ultra fine point for any detail lines or smaller areas, and any stencils or drawing reference that you may need. After tracing my drawing, I started to color it in with Sharpies. An important thing to know when coloring is that any color you use will turn out much darker once it's baked. I recommend using a scrap piece of the plastic to make some quick lines or swatches of your colors and bake it first before coloring if you're going for a specific color or look. I had already done a quick painting of what Birdie's face colors and markings were so that I could recreate it with the Sharpies. Again, this was my first try and I spent way too much time coloring this in. Next, I cut out the shape, making sure to leave a little bit of extra space from the outline of my drawing. You don't want to lose the outline you just spent all that time tracing, so give it a little bit of room. After cutting, I evaluated how I wanted the charm to hang and where I would punch the hole to match that vision. I should have punched the hole before so carefully cutting out the shape because sometimes it tears when you're taking the plastic piece off of the hole punch, but I didn't do that. I also didn't pay as close attention as I thought, so I ended up punching the hole past the edge of the plastic, thereby rendering my charm useless. So after all that work, I went back to tracing the original drawing again, and spoiler alert, I ended up doing this specific charm 6 more times and having multiple problems in the baking stage before Googling why this was happening and how to fix it. But anyway, here's me being stubborn and making 2 of the charms at the same time, surprisingly to no one. I also messed up the hole punch on one of the charms again, but instead of letting it go to waste, I decided it would be a good time to test out how acrylic paint would work as a coloring method. I had read that acrylic craft paint, especially the cheap stuff at the craft store, is supposed to be okay for shrinky dinks. I didn't find that necessarily to be the case for me, but it could be my paint and my oven that are the problem. Maybe it'll work for you. Here are the results. Both experienced cupping, but I tried to flatten one out with a rolling pin and all it did was smoosh it. As for paint, it didn't crack, but the painted portions of plastic didn't fully shrink like it should. In later tests, portions with paint didn't shrink much at all, while the rest of the piece did, resulting in what I can only describe as some sort of lava lamp hallucination nightmare. So you'd think I'd try another method, right? If you said yes, you're absolutely incorrect. I doubled down, traced, and painted an even more detailed piece this time. And what a surprise! I ended up with one of the many aforementioned hallucination nightmares. After 3 more attempts, I googled what to do and found the most pro tip of pro tips to ensure a flat, even shrinky dink. Take the sheet of parchment paper you've lined your pan with and fold it in half. I made sure to make my fold sharp, like folding a birthday card or folding the lines of a paper airplane. Next, place your plastic pieces in between the layers, ideally close to the fold. Then bake. When you pull them out, you can also take a metal spatula and firmly and evenly press the shrinky dink to flatten out the charm further if needed. Make sure to do this on a heat-safe surface and be really careful not to burn yourself. This did the trick, and I finally ended up with a charm that was the right size. With this one, I hadn't colored it in at all, only done the line work, so I decided to paint it on the back side so that I wouldn't potentially lose the detail or smear any of the Sharpie line work I had just made. Sometimes it will smear or smudge even after baking. I liked the painting process for this specific charm of Birdie because my baby deserves detail, but I ended up mostly using Sharpies for the remaining pieces, minus a few outliers. Now that I was confident in my technique, I moved on to making the rest of my charms. I made 3 of each design, some using the exact same markers, some varying up the colors or tip sizes, and so on. I wanted to have variety once they were baked to see what worked, leaving some with clear portions to see if or how I wanted to color them in after they shrunk. I made charms based on what popped into my head and things I like aliens, ghosts, my cat, the vampire tome that Giles hands to Buffy in the first episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she's like, "No, that's not what I'm looking for." You know, those sorts of things. Obviously make whatever you want. Initials, shapes, favorite foods, something that represents your hobbies and interests. That's the whole point. In case you didn't catch it, I made both a ghost and a velociraptor, specifically the fictional design from Jurassic Park. Not just because I love spooky and dinosaurs, but as a nod to the name of this channel. Clever Ghoul isn't just a play on clever girl, like I think I'm just some smart spooky gal. No, it's an homage to the specific and, dare I say, iconic part of Jurassic Park where Dr. Sattler has to get the electricity back on in the park. It's all out. The raptors are running amok. So she and Muldoon are going to that shed, and she runs to the shed, and he says he's going to have her back because he knows they're already being hunted by velociraptors. And he makes the mistake of staring one straight in the eye, and he even says, "I've got her now." But no, you don't, Muldoon, because if you recall in the beginning of the movie, when Dr. Grant is dealing with that bratty kid on the dig site who thinks that a velociraptor looks like a big turkey, and he tells him, "You stare at the velociraptor. He's staring right back at you." And that's where the attack comes, not from the front, but from the side. And then he does that whooshing things with his fingers, and he goes, "And the other two raptors you didn't even know were there, like they get you." And so Muldoon is staring at this raptor, and as he's staring at it, we're all like, come on, it's staring at you at the side. And sure enough, she comes in from the side, and before she can rip his face off, he turns and he looks at her, he mutters his last words, "Clever girl." So yeah, that's where I get my channel name from, and why I drew a velociraptor and a ghost, and yeah. Once I was done prepping the charms, I baked them using the method I explained previously, and they all turned out great. Some too dark, but that's why I made multiples. I decided to color some of the clear ones in and let them dry before I moved on to the next step, sealing the charms. There are different ways to seal Shrinky Dinks, and you do want to seal them so that the art doesn't scratch off or get faded or ruined. But I like to use Dimensional Magic by Mod Podge. The result is smooth and super glossy, but also slightly dimensional, like those 3D puffy stickers or stick-on earrings from the 80s and 90s. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. You want to be careful not to shake this glue because you will get bubbles. I like to carefully pour a little bit onto the charm, then use the nozzle to help spread it around carefully, not pressing into the charm or plastic, but slowly spreading and moving the glue around the surface, like very delicately icing a cake. I also took a toothpick and pushed it through the holes to make sure there was no glue filling them, so we were able to get the jump rings in later. When I got to the ghost charm, I realized I wanted him to be sparkly, so I pulled out my favorite loose glitter makeup, obviously from Trixie Cosmetics, called Marshmallow. It is the most beautiful white iridescent glitter. Sadly, it's discontinued. I tapped just a little bit into the palette, added some of the glue in, and mixed it with a toothpick. Then I took a brush and painted it on a test ghost charm that had set kind of wrong, and it worked. So once I saw it worked on the test, I did the same on the real ghost charm I was going to use. Because I brushed it on, the glue laid flat, so I knew that once it dried, I would put a thin layer of the glue on the way I did with the other charms so it matched. Dimensional Magic takes at least 3 hours to dry, so I made some more charms while I waited. I marked out the rough size of the charms I had made previously on a blank sheet of paper, placed the piece of plastic on top of that, and freehanded a bunch of designs. I kinda just played around. Some were successful and others were not. Here they are before baking and after. So, then again, I repeated the process of sealing them and waiting for them to dry. While waiting for those charms to dry, I figured now would be a good time to show you the bracelet and how we're going to assemble the charms. You'll need jump rings, some round nose pliers, and if you want to make the charms detachable for a customizable bracelet, lobster clasps. I also brought out the wire cutters in case, but they aren't really necessary unless you decide to make your own jump rings out of wire you have sitting around. Pull out a jump ring that isn't too small or too big. The Goldilocks of jump rings, if you will. Take the needle nose pliers, insert them into the ring, and slowly open it up. You can also twist or pull the ring open to get your charm on. Put the open jump ring through the hole of your charm, then press the jump ring back together. I like to press it from multiple angles to ensure it's closed as tightly as possible. Next, open another jump ring of the same size. Here's where you can customize your bracelet. You can put the new open jump ring through the first one that's attached to the charm, do not close it yet, or you can thread it through the hole at the bottom of the lobster clasp and close it so you have a removable charm. Here's an example of how a removable charm can be added to the bracelet. If you choose to attach the charm directly to the bracelet, find where you want to attach the charm, thread that second open jump ring through the bracelet loop, and close it like the first one. Now your charm is attached to your bracelet, and you can repeat the process with your remaining charms. When it came to arranging my charms, I drew out a rough line of where some of the bigger and smaller links lined up on my bracelet. Then I made notes about what charms I wanted to use and what their main colors were. I wanted the colors to be dispersed throughout the bracelet, not just have a clump of one color on one end. This is just my preference. If you want to sort and place your charms by color, go for it. I personally wanted more of a balanced look, so color and size came into play when deciding placement. Then I started the process of adding the first jump ring onto my charms. I decided to make Birdie's charm removable so you could see how that looks in the final piece. Now that all the initial jump rings have been added on, it's time to add the jump rings that will connect to the bracelet itself. And we're done! Let's take a look at our finished product. What kind of charms would be on your bracelet? Comment below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you can get notifications, and follow me on TikTok and Instagram at cleverghoul.yt. See you next week. Bye!